All right, good afternoon. The time is 12:01, and I'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of the EDC to order. Today's invocation and pledge will be led by Mr. Joey Afaji.
If you can join me. Father, thank you for the opportunity for us to be here in your name. We look toward your guidance in this meeting for the best decisions of our city. In your name and grace, we ask. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Brittany, will you call the roll?
Jay Jackson,
Here.
Joey Afaji,
Here.
Adam Martin,
Here.
Jonas Titus,
Here.
Diane Drussel, Jeremy Tate,
Let the record show that Jeremy Tate is absent today. Moving on to announcements.
All right, on Thursday, August 29th, there's a family swim time from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. at the Coppers Cove City Park. Saturday, September 14th, 2019, there's a morning mingle, 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. at the Five Hills Art Guild. And Saturday, September 21st, 2019, there's a gallop or trot 5K from 6:30 a.m. to 11 o'clock a.m. at the Coppers Cove City Park. And Joey Afaji has one more announcement.
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and tell everybody about the passing of Forrest Jim French, one of the EDC directors back in the early 90s, also previous council member and prior mayor. His visitation is tonight and his burial is tomorrow. So we just want to go ahead and send a little prayer out to them and basically to both the family of the French. So.
Are there any other announcements?
Not at this time.
Okay. Moving on to Citizens Forum. At this time, citizens will be allowed to speak on any matter other than personnel matters, matters under litigation, or matters on the regular agenda for a length of time not to exceed 5 minutes per person. 30 minutes total has been allotted for this section. Is there anyone wishing to speak at Citizens Forum today? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under this item are considered to be routine by the EDC Board of Directors and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Item F1, consideration and action on approval of minutes for the regular meeting held on July 24, 2019. Brittany Sanders, Administrative Assistant, EDC. What is the desire of the board?
Adam, I'd go ahead and make that motion to approve F1 as read.
Motion for approval by Joey,
And I will second that, Joe.
second by Jay. Is there any additional discussion on this item? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Looks like there is no public hearing today. So we'll move over to the action items. Item H1, consideration and action on authorizing the release of funds to the City of Coppers Cove for charges to the CCEDC for services rendered as agreed upon by various city employees for the month of July 2019. Velia Key, Director of Financial Services.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
The invoice for July 2019 is in the amount of $628.89, and that includes hours work for the finance staff in the IS department. Are there any questions that I may answer at this time?
None by me.
you have any
No.
questions, Jay? All right. Thank you, Velia. What is the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to take the action to approve this item.
Motion for approval by Jay,
I'll second the motion to approve H1 as read.
second by Joey. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Item H2, consideration and action on approving the unaudited financial report of the Coppers Cove EDC for the month of July 2019. Velia Key.
Thank you, sir. So the highlights for the month of July, there were 2 payroll runs. The employees received their paychecks on July the 12th and the 26th. The total cash available was $6.3 million. The amount of interest earned during the month was equal to $11,689. The allocation of the portfolio, fully liquid, as July the 31st, 2019, the operating account was 12%, and the textbook account, 88%. The total portfolio, again, $6.3 million. The operating account has $753,918, and the textbook account, $5.5 million. The difference between last year to where we are as of July the 31st, the portfolio increased by 14%. The total revenue exceeded expenditures by $816,767. The total sales allocation received from the city was in the amount of $109,133. The total amount of the expenditures for the month were equal to $33,806, of which $21,989 were for employee salaries and benefits. We cut 26 checks during the month. All of those checks are considered routine. However, if the board wants me to speak of any one specific, I'm able to do so. If we go to the next one, where we can see the beginning fund balance was $5.7 million. The total expenditures year to date, $373,527. The ending fund balance is $6.5 million as of July the 31st. Are there any questions?
I had a quick question. This may be one better for Jonas. It just kind of caught my eye on the monthly financial report. Looks like we have budgeted for rent $19,200. We've already expended $14,400 as of July. Is there going to be an issue here?
We can definitely pull that and
Okay.
get clarification on that, and make sure that, you know, our budget is in line with what we are paying.
Okay,
Yeah, double check that.
So we pay $1,600 a month?
okay, so I can't.
How
do
much
that.
per month, please?
$1,600.
So 6 more months of that. 5 more months.
Yeah. 8,000.
Yeah, looks like we might go over.
No, 1,600 times 12 would be 19,200.
So what's 1,600 times 5?
It's 8,000, yeah? Yeah.
But you have 19,200 in here. Maybe it's just a timing issue of the reporting? Is that
Yeah,
possible?
and I can look at that
Okay,
and see if
So I know we
any.
budgeted per month.
okay, and that's what's in here, so it just looks like we spent quite a bit in that category, or maybe something else got in there. Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Key?
Not for me.
All right, what is the desire of the board?
Adam, do you want clarifications before we go ahead and proceed on that budget? Or you're okay with?
Maybe like a subject to, because it, like Diane mentioned, the
Okay,
full year is budgeted in there.
Okay.
But it looks like we're already at 14-something.
Okay,
So maybe a subject to clarification, what's going on the rental account.
okay. So I'll go ahead, subject to clarification of the rental budget. I'll move to go ahead and approve the remainder of H2.
Okay. Motion for approval by Joey,
And I will second the approval for H2. item.
second by Jay. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Item H3, consideration and action on approving Resolution 2019-03 and accepting the quarterly investment report as presented for the quarter ending June 2019 per the investment policy. Velia Keith.
Thank you, sir. So the allocation of the portfolio for the operating account is 12%, and for the taxable account, 88%. The difference between March 31st and June 30, the portfolio increased by 5.6%. A total increase in dollars of $337,899. And again, it is all liquid. Are there any questions that I may answer?
Questions, guys?
I'm wondering how early we can get this report, because like those reports are all for July. Okay, we are discussing July. How early we can get those reports that we can review them before we come here to the meeting? Like, can we get them like 10 days before the meeting that we have time just to review?
Yeah, what is the cutoff for the agenda prior to a board
I know
meeting?
that Brittany sent those out on Friday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Proposed
She
three
said the
three
whole packet
business
out
days.
on Friday.
Okay.
And we can possibly, it depends on Delia's workload, because, it just depends on her workload when she
Yeah.
does financials in. But not much earlier than that, I
Yeah.
would think, because she's gotta wait for everything to clear as well.
Right. And also, you can call Diane or Jonas at any time to visit about them. Maybe you'll have it a little bit
I will.
earlier.
Yeah, if you've ever got questions after you get the packet, always feel free to come
Okay.
in or call us.
I will.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank
So,
you.
Do we want because I need to know, so does the board prefers to get the financials before the agenda is published? Is that what I'm hearing?
Is it possible?
I can,
Yeah, that was my question. If we can get them before the agenda,
so
that's,
perhaps 10 days before the agenda get published, no. But 5 days before the agenda get published, yes.
yeah.
I can make that
Just to
happen.
give us more time.
Sure.
So like
Yeah.
that Monday before you publish the agenda on that Friday?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
What's the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to take the motion to approve item, how's it? H3, yes.
Motion for approval by Jay,
I'll second it.
second by Joey. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank
Velia. Item H4, consideration and action on approving and adopting Resolution 2019-2 for the fiscal year 2019-2020, proposed budget for the Coppers Cove EDC. Jonas Titus, Executive Director.
Hello. This is the same report that was given in the June meeting. Our budget has not changed, but this is in accordance with approving the resolution, which we will take to council this month for approval. So will be on the agenda this coming Tuesday. So as you see, our current year budget We see a slight decrease from last year. We're starting to see some stabilization and some conformity now that we understand what the operational expenses will be moving forward. There are some non-departmental single-time expenditures here for $2 million as part of a land swap and a DAG grant participation. And those numbers are not finalized, or the land grant exact amount is not finalized, but we anticipate it'll be somewhere in that area. And then looking at what comprises our total budget as a whole. We really are talking about 7% of our budget as a whole is our actual programming. Our staff obligations and general obligations comprise 93% of our overall budget. And then summarizing our budget, looking forward, we are going to talk about at the end of the meeting, setting the date for our future budget workshop, where we'll talk about a lot of the things that were discussed within our strategic planning session and our joint meeting with council. And we've already created a draft of a 10-year budget moving forward, but nothing has changed for the fiscal year budget. Next year, Adam and I talked briefly yesterday about the process of how we're going to really take a much deeper dive into maybe finding some efficiencies now that we are fully staffed and have our legs under us moving forward. So with that, we'll entertain any questions.
Any questions?
None for me.
No, for me.
What is the desire of the board?
Adam, I'll move to go ahead and approve H4 as read.
Okay. Motion for approval by Joey,
And I will second the approval for H4.
second by Jay. Is there any additional discussion on this item?
None for me.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Item H5, consideration and action on approving the development standards for the Narrows Business and Technology Park. Diane Dressel, Assistant Director, CCEDC.
Okay, y'all may remember that we've been actually discussing these for a while. These development standards were actually created a few years ago. They were never approved and moved forward. So that's one thing that we want to move forward now is get those approved, get them in place. So anybody building into the Narrows will have a set standard that they have to go by. So I sent all of these to you all a couple weeks ago, and I know that Adam responded to me with a couple of questions. And then, of course, Barbara's here for some clarifications, too. The questions that I had gotten from, let me even back up from there. Jonas and I actually even met with the Planning and Review Board or committee, which consisted of the building department, the fire department, the inspector, the Public Works Director. So we wanted their input and their review on this since this is something that they do every day. So we met with them a couple times, made revisions, sent them back out, and so we've gotten everything up to that point. So now it's time for you all to review these as well, because these are the standards that we will be living by. So again, I did send them out, and the comments that had, Adam only had a few comments, and if you guys have more, that's fine. I haven't made them in this new presentation only because I want to make all the changes at one time, because it sometimes may change page numbers. One thing I do want to say is after speaking to Barbara, instead of the Narrows development standards, it'll be the Narrows covenants, conditions, and restrictions. This is terminology that developers use. So we just figured we would standardize that. One of the other points that Adam brought up was the Development Review Board, or the DRB. In the original manual, it says that it'll be comprised of 6 people. In speaking to Barbara, we thought that 5 might be better because that way you don't have to worry about a tie. It will be comprised of 2 EDC people, 2 city people. We're thinking more from the staff side, not council people, and 1 tenant. And we'll figure out who will fill in that spot in between any tenants being in there. We do have a tenant, but he's not here all the time. Adam also requested, we had 14 days for the amount of time for the review board to review and get back to anybody with suggestions and decisions. He had originally asked about if we could reword it to a reasonable amount of time. not to exceed a certain amount of time. And I don't know if you saw the things. I know that Jonas said you wanted to put 30, so I don't know if you wanted to put a reasonable amount of time not to exceed 30 days or just not to exceed 30 days.
Well, my initial thought was, not to put us in a position where we can't, am I not?
Yeah, I say that
Okay.
only because sometimes on the recordings, if you all don't speak
Yeah.
into the microphones, you can't hear it.
As written, it talks about the Development Review Board has 14 days to review, and I thought that might be putting a lot of pressure on that board, especially with the different parties involved. And I don't know that we even necessarily need to put a time limit, but again, this isn't my area of expertise. I would just be content with a reasonable amount of time without putting a deadline on it that we may or may not be able to meet.
I will say that there's certainly concerns, but that they come more from the city side and recent legislation about, and things about how you develop. But there is always concern on getting things done in a quick manner. And this last legislative session led to a shot clock being basically imposed on everything such as preliminary plats, construction plans, final plats, all of those sorts of things being approved. But that, again, that's at the city side, that's not at your side. And that's there's been a bit of a blend in this document of things that would potentially be things that you would have on the city side versus things that you can allow. I want there to be very good clarity that simply because you meet these standards does not mean that city is in any way bound by that for the most part. I mean, I know that you two are working together and you've had input and you've had that discussion, but because these are more covenants that are running with the land and restrictions with the land, there's no enforceability of those covenants on the part of the city. And the city has its own regulations, and the city has its own ability to regulate and enforce its.
I thought there was language in here that says, at no time does this supersede city.
It does, but I just want to make sure, because there's things like approvals, variances, exceptions,
okay.
all that sort of thing. It lends itself to some thought that, well, if you get a variance from, for this, that's going to translate over to a variance from the city. It may. I don't want to mislead anybody. So, one, I would make sure that is like way up at the front. That these aren't real, and that's why I asked that this be modified more to be called the CCNRs, because it really is restrictions. It's covenants that you want on that land and you want to run with that land, but you don't necessarily cede over anything over to the city, but the city likewise doesn't cede anything to you. They can have their own standards if they wanted to for various things, but they have their own clocks. So if you're asking for somebody to come before you and do your approval, getting back to your point, you want somebody to come in and get your approval as the board, I think you need to probably look at 30 days being what has been construed as a reasonable period of time to have that review of those plans. That, again, that is not tied at all with what the city is going to have to do. The city is going to have to undergo its own review, and they do have time limits that they have to meet. So I think your reasonableness, just by the virtue of the current legislation, is 30 days.
Okay.
And to your point, do we need to put a little disclaimer at the beginning of that review paragraph?
That's what I'm thinking we should
Okay.
do, and I'll get with Barbara on that. That way it's very clear, just like when we make any reference to variances and stuff, the variances approved by the board and not by the city.
Yes. I mean, in essence, what you're doing is you're allowing it under your own standards. But again, to the extent that those still need to be blessed by and approved by the city, that's all there. So,
Okay, so we'll just get more specific on some of those items to where it's very clear. Anybody reading it knows who's approved. The DRB is responsible for this, period.
And going back to the number of people on this review board, do we need to, and I don't even know if it's in this document or another one, establish what a quorum is, meeting times, places, things like that? Is that even necessary?
I don't believe it's necessary that you have to have, I mean, I would somewhat think that you would want to have the flexibility. You might have, the plans might already be over at the city, and so you'd want the ability, maybe the board wants to meet there. Or they might be still at your offices, and so you want the flexibility of asking the board to come over and meet, at your offices. If you were to ultimately have an office out at the Narrows, you may want to have the ability to ultimately carve that location as your place for your board meeting. But for right now, I wouldn't address an actual location for a meeting. It's not necessary for you as the board to necessarily have that carved in here. Just that you're going to meet when you're needed. Also, is you're not necessarily going to be having regular meetings. You're going to be meeting when it's necessary, as I understand it. Is that correct, Jonas?
Yeah.
Okay.
And does this board have a parent entity? Or is it a standalone?
It's like a
Board.
committee,
Okay.
and you're the parent.
The
You
EDC
own the
is
property.
parent? Okay.
You're the parent.
HOA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like
we're
an-
discussing creating an HOA type thing down the road, but we want to get these in place so that way we can, because once we get these approved as well, they'll be recorded with the county.
So it would follow the procedures and things like that set up for what we have for subcommittees in the EDC? Is that,
Well, I mean, to the extent that this is like an offshoot of you, because you are the owners and this is an HOA for you, but you are tying in certain aspects of the city into
Sure.
that.
we
and
need
you
the
want
expertise and the blessing.
Right, and you're an offshoot of the city, so
Right.
it,
Big circle?
there's trickle down and circling on all of this, so, but the ultimate, because you are the owner of the property, it ultimately rests with you as to how you're having the Narrows develop and build out. So,
And I guess the root of my question is, as far as policies and procedures of this committee or board, what we have addressed in the bylaws, it should fall
Yes.
underneath that. Okay.
yes.
Okay, and the next item that you brought up, Adam, was that, within the document, there are links to everything, but it does not say as per city ordinances, so I will add that verbiage. This is an Article 5 dash blah, 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 as referred to in the city ordinances, so people will always know, if they're reading that, they'll know they can go to the ordinances if they don't have it on their computer electronically. So it'll always make reference back to where the rule or law or whatever the process came from. And those are the only items that you had brought up, and all those changes will be made. And I know Barbara wanted to be here as well to make sure that we all understand about the CCNRs and the HOA type thing that we're going to be doing, and then her input on the 5 committee member as opposed to the 6. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Barbara?
No, I just wanted to be able to answer any questions that you all might have, because I was asking this to be modified a little bit more, even after you had all received it. And so I didn't know if you might have questions, so.
I have a question, please. On the item number 2, the Development Review Board, on the costs,
On
is
which
the
one?
review itself, is it free?
The Development Review Board, that is, again, that's something we'll have to discuss in-house because these were created prior to me even being here, and I'm not sure what their costs are associated that they're talking
Yeah,
about.
because it's look here that it is, the review by itself is free unless there is some additional cost to
Yes.
the review, like consultant or whatever. Is that true that the review is free?
I would say yes, since it's being done by staff members and city personnel. Yes. So I'll modify that as well.
At this time, it appears to be free. If you were in an HOA world, not always.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's a good point, though, because I imagine the city's going to expect to be reimbursed from the EDC for any work done on this? Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Martin, in response to your question, if the city provides any service to the EDC, then that's a billable cost. And if I may add just one additional piece to Ms. Barbara's point, is the fact that the city is under a planning and plan review shot clock, which is 30 days. And if you don't have a timeline in your review standards, we will do our review and we will submit those comments to the builder or the developer. And then if you come back later and say, no, you need things changed, that's a frustration to that business, that's a cost to that business, and that's a reputation that goes out beyond the city to everybody else that says it's difficult to build in Copperas Cove. So that coordination between this review organization and the city's planning and review organization must be very close.
Makes all the sense in the world, and it's 30 days with the city?
It's 30 days for the initial review, and then we have an additional 15 days to respond to any comments.
Okay.
That 30-day clock starts when they receive a complete, administratively complete package, which, you know, they have some time to look at, and I don't know what you've been advised is that time, but you generally have some time to look at it and make sure all the ducks are in a row. Papers have all been filed, pictures, whatever is required. And then you can say, we have an administratively complete packet. Now we're starting our review, and that's the 30 days.
And we're taking a conservative but very concrete approach, is nothing will be accepted until we verify it's complete.
That makes sense.
So back to Jay's question on the cost, we have the ability to pass some of those city expenses back through to the developer?
I would think that we could. Could we put something in place for that, Barbara?
You certainly can, you know.
And that could be an optional thing, I mean, may.
I mean, if
something like
there's
that.
something that's really complicated, you know, there might be, but again, you don't want to look like you're playing favorites. Everybody's the same in the Narrows.
Everybody's the same, but if one of the, you know, the city engineers or something like that spends a lot of hours on a very complicated issue, it may make a lot of sense to pass that along.
Well, again, their review is based upon, I mean, if this isn't, if it's not something that you have control over under your parameters, and it's something that's going to be on the city side for their approval, that cost is going to be charged by them to that developer. So, in other words, one, you don't want to be double billing them, but if there's like, you might just have it this as kind of a permit fee that you charge everybody for you to go through and just make sure that everything's in order in accordance with your regulations that you feel that you want, your standards that you want. But again, you got to be really clear here. their costs that they're going to incur for things of having to go back and forth with the city are their costs with the city. That should not be translated to things that you all are going to have to try and bill and get them paid for and everything else. Yours is just going to be your review as to whether they meet the standards that you want.
Within our
Those are the, though, and I will say that one of the other things that got removed this last legislative session was anything that allowed and required a building to have particular materials added, a particular look, a particular aesthetic. So building materials, that's all been taken away from a city at this time. Those are the things that you get to look at, they don't. So you are the ones that are saying, we don't want glare on the metal building. We want a facade, we want this, we want these 5 colors, those are things that you get to look at, not the
Right,
city.
and the
But
city
we'll be
can't
leaning on
enforce
the
it.
expertise of the members present representing the city, I would imagine, on this board.
Yes.
So, but to Jay's point, is it in there where we can pass?
It's not addressed.
Okay.
So I do think that ultimately, when you get your board, you can certainly put in there, there's going to be a permit fee of X dollars for coming to us and getting our blessing. Because that's something that every HOA, every board that has these types of things would have that ability. And you are going to be using some expertise to look at that and make sure that that's what you want. So,
So we can add that, or it's already? in
She's
there?
saying we can
Okay,
add that.
Okay.
And
Yes.
again, there's got to be the separation of what, like she said, we are just approving what we put in here, that you have to have tilt wall buildings, you have to have certain things.
Sure.
But the building part will still, they have to be in compliance with roads, they have to be in compliance with drainage and sewage and all of that, and that's on the city's side. So any of the builders already know that, I think, anyway, and like your subdivision committees and stuff like
Yeah.
that. That's exactly what it's like. So they're still gonna have to be in compliance with the city, period. We can ask about the look.
Right, but some of those standards are a little complicated, and we will be relying on the expertise from the
Oh,
city.
absolutely,
So,
yeah.
and we definitely want to make sure we get this right, because we plan on putting a lot of buildings out there.
He's got 7 people lined up. No, I'm joking. I'm joking, everybody off record.
Anything else?
Just a discussion, once you're ready.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Jay?
No.
Is this an action item?
Yes, it is.
What is the desire of the board?
Well, for me, Adam, because this is still having some changes in there, could we look toward tabling it so we can get the final product? Any additional, or are we looking at approving what we have now pending any changes?
Yeah, that's a good point. We do want to get this
Yeah.
right.
I think it would make sense for us to give you a clean document next month for
So-
approval.
If it's okay with the board, I'd ask if this item be tabled for next month.
Yeah,
Motion and a second?
I will, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Um,
okay, basically, my motion is to table the item H5 for review and for next month.
Okay, motion for table by Joey,
And I will second that.
second by Jay. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
And that document will be sent to you all well before the meeting, so you can review it and read it and go through everything, to have any other input. And we'll also address whatever I'm doing over here on the computer. I'll make it a point to put down the things that we've discussed and where the changes are.
I like, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item H6, consideration and action on approving and awarding a proposal for the demolition of the EDC-owned building located at 201 South Second Street, Coppers Cove, Texas. Diane Dressel.
Okay, I know that you all think that this was already done because it was supposed to be done. In May, I had brought a couple of proposals, and you all awarded one and approved one. The day the gentleman was supposed to start, he called and said he was unable to do the project at all. He said there was no way he could do it. So I had contacted some of the other companies, and I had, looked for different demolition companies, and I'd gotten different bids. But I had only gotten 2 new ones, and actually one was a subcontractor for one of the other ones. So we decided to do an RFP. Of the RFP, there were 6 people who responded as far as they were interested in it, but there were only 3 proposals submitted. You've got them, they're not on here. I'm sorry, because I was waiting on clarification from a couple of the companies, because I had a couple questions for them. But you all do have them in front of you. The first bid was from Amerivet. Theirs was very, very detailed, line item by line item. You can tell they do a lot of government contracting. But their quote was $149,197. Again, that was a very detailed, and they covered everything that we needed. The second bid was for $61,100, and that was for 2 chains. That is the same company that cleared the Narrows for us, and we were happy with them as well. And again, they provided all the information that they had, that we had requested. The third quote, the third and final, was from Sierra Demolition. Theirs came in at $21,700. And they didn't have a whole lot of detail, so I did call him. Actually, I called the 2 that didn't have as much detail as the other one, just for clarification, to make sure that they had in their bid included the costs for, they have to have a licensed plumber and a licensed electrician, an HVAC person. And I told them if they didn't have it in the bid, it didn't matter, because we couldn't change the bid anyway, but I wanted to make sure on their end that if we were even considering them, that they had actually taken everything into consideration. And I did that with 2 chains, and I did that with Sierra, and they both said yes, they had taken everything into consideration. 2 chains, they had actually also taken the actual dump fees into consideration, and they probably had a better idea of the fees since they did a lot of the dumping for those 150 piles of concrete and asphalt that they cleared out from the Narrows. Sierra, when they actually go dump, they will invoice us for those amounts. He indicated he would be dumping at the Temple landfill, so we did inquire about what the cost for that is, and that was $21.79 per ton, or 2 tons, I can't remember. Anyway, I don't think that we're gonna come up with a $40,000. But the jump between the 21,000 and the 61,000,
40,000.
I don't think it's going to be a $40,000 increase from the 21,000. So I need for you all to decide which company you would like me to go with.
Mr. Afaji, you are on the,
Yes, Mr. Afaji met with me because he's part of the contract committee. Another person was not available, but Jonas sat in with us as well, and we went through each of the proposals, and we discussed all of them, and, spoke about the differences in them.
All the questions I had asked, Diane has already presented to the board, and
Joey, can you talk louder into the microphone, please?
I'm sorry. All the items that basically I've asked or had questions on, Diane had reached out to each of the entities and she's provided all of us on the board all that information's already had. Questions asked and answered. The big question was clarity, more clarification. One of the Sierra gave a 1-pager, 1 paragraph, and I said, well, can you provide me more information as far as details, as far as comparisons to the other 2 bids? And Diane has basically presented to us that yes, they understand all of the requests on the RFP. So it's up to, basically it's come up to us to make a determination.
And I think a lot of the difference in the pricing, because it does go from one, it's kind of like if you all remember when we did the original bids for the Narrows, the lowest bid was like $146,000, and the highest bid was $798,000. But I think part of that is companies who own their equipment and their people versus companies who have to rent the equipment and the people, because that's obviously going to be a cost to them as well. So I believe that, well, I know Sierra owns a lot of their own equipment. 2 Chainz would have to bring their equipment here, which they did, like they did when they did the Narrows. But that's where the big gap in the pricing, I believe, comes from.
I have a question. Just to be able to compare apple to apple, can we ask Sarah to include the dumping cost in their bid?
They don't know what the dumping cost is because you get weighed when you go into the
I know,
dump.
yeah.
Yeah, and so he doesn't really have that. They will invoice us for that, which is not out of the ordinary anyway. But like I said, Jonas and I were doing the math, and it's only $21.79 or $28, $27 and something cents
Per ton?
per ton. Yeah, and you would have to come up with $40,000 to go from Sierra to 2 Chainz.
Yeah.
Any due diligence done on the companies?
I'm sorry?
Any due diligence, investigation of?
Well, 2 Chainz I had done before.
We know
And I know that Sierra has done work with Temple in them.
The City of Temple?
I'm sorry?
City of Temple?
Yes, we did do Google searches, Google reviews, and, of course, all the reviews on Sierra were on the Sierra Development website, so we know that things were.
But Sierra has done several municipalities too. They do a lot of
They're listed
municipalities.
Yes, they do check out.
So just looking at this list, 2 Chainz we're familiar with. They've done work with us, and they have a price. And then the Sierra is a third of it, with not very much detail, which kind of gives me a little pause.
The ball is in your court, sir.
Do you have a recommendation from the committee?
I didn't give a recommendation. I just asked questions, and again, Diane has has answered both to me personally and brought it to the board. Now, if you wish to go ahead and get my recommendations, I can provide what I've read and that we already have in front of us.
Are you prepared to do that today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, it's although it was question asked and answered by email, I'm still looking at what we can and look at if there's going to be any more changes. I'm still looking at, are they going to go, what's the word that basically?
Change orders?
Thank you. Change orders in the future for one company. But it also goes back again that the document they provided is that they have done work with the city of Killeen, with the city of Temple, and Round Rock. So I'm at a 50-50 right now. 2 Chainz, of course, we all know, we've worked with them. I've actually observed them doing the work out there at the Narrows. I didn't get the only thing I didn't get was what kind of work they did with demolition, except for one. Yet, the 21,000 Sierra has references.
Right. Sierra is a demolition company, and 2 Chainz does more. I mean, there's the differences.
So, again, my recommendation would be Sierra Demolitions but my worry is, would there be change orders?
Was
Okay.
that, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, is the proposal, was that unit cost based? Or was it a not to exceed cost? How was their proposal?
It was a
put in?
unit-based cost. We did not say it did not have to exceed a certain amount.
Okay. And I understand from Mr. Jackson, his concern is that the cost is not put in there as far as the actual.
The dump
just
fees,
The
the actual
dump fees, but those would be at cost, I would think. There might be a slight markup on those, but generally those would be at cost. I would think that would be coming back to you. Whereas in the other one, there might be some markup on, I mean, if their dump fees are already included, they've already kind of analyzed the amount. Did they give you a rough estimate of the cost of the dump?
He did not. They
He
did
didn't
not.
break that part out.
No, he didn't, they didn't break that out, but when I spoke to Two Chains, I specifically asked that question, are you including your dump and disposal fees? And he said yes. And like I said, I think because they're more familiar with where they had dumped before, all of that concrete and everything from the Narrows, they took 150 truckloads almost. So they're probably pretty more aware of what the actual cost was because they've done it. Because they had to rent the dump trucks and the people and on that part of it.
You know, I don't think that Sierra's bid is out of line. I mean, I've heard of buildings being taken down for this much, but I would definitely, like Barbara mentioned, want to know what we're looking at as far, and they don't even have to give us a quote on how many loads, but what kind of markup are we facing? You know, you're passing the cost along, but it's not going to be $2,000 per trip that you're adding on. We want to know that.
Yeah.
And I think verification of the references, visit with some of these municipalities that have done business with them before, and you know, get some information on how the process was. Were there change orders? Did they do it in a timely manner? That kind of information.
Okay?
Yeah, because probably we're gonna surprise with the number of the dumping fee, which gonna be double the cost, the 21,000. You never know. So if they can just put an estimate for them, like how much gonna be the dumping cost, and add it to the 21, is gonna be more
You know,
clear for us.
I would be willing to make a motion if the rest of the board approves to go with Sierra and leave that up to your judgment as far as are the fees reasonable for dumping once you get the information and the satisfactory reference checks. And I can formalize that in a motion.
Yeah, as far as not gonna exceed the 61, which is the
Well,
second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, we don't want them to say,
Yeah,
it's 10,000? Okay, it's 10,000.
yeah.
On Sierra, on his response when we were emailing, he did say that he would provide landfill receipts directly from the landfill with his invoice
Okay.
for the actual dump fees.
And that led us to contact the landfill and get that unit cost from them so that we could do our in-house arithmetic and figure out that it would have to be 1,400 tons for them to get to the delta to cross that threshold. So, but we'll definitely get that verified from them to make sure that they have a level of comfort of exactly how much they anticipate dumping.
Okay.
Well, I would make a motion that we go with Sierra for demolition of the EDC-owned building, subject to staff's review and conversation about the dumping fees and how that's going to be assessed, as well as solid reference checks, satisfactory reference checks.
Yeah, do you want me to second that?
If that's your desire.
Yeah,
Okay.
I will second that.
All right.
Yes.
So I made the motion and Jay seconded. Is there any additional discussion on the item?
Not for me.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item H7, discussion and direction on scheduling a date for the future budget planning workshop and capital projects discussion. Jonas Titus.
Yes, thank you. So this is the second phase of what we've been talking about for a little bit of time now, is the execution of our strategic planning process. So we've talked about a number of projects. In our exercise with Avalanche, we identified and prioritized a couple of things, but staff really hadn't had an opportunity to really delve into those and get some preliminary homework and due diligence and cost estimates. We've begun to do that. Adam and I went earlier this month and met with our bond counsel. We've created a 10-year budget template. We've talked with our electric delivery company about some projects that we've discussed. We've talked with various real estate professionals. We've referenced old studies that have been done on cost of construction, cost of infrastructure. And we have a lot of things that we can do and to really bring value to our citizens and our community. But we want to go through this through a thoughtful process and make sure that we are spending any community assets in a careful process. So with that, and us having the opportunity to begin to initiate our due diligence, we think it would be an appropriate time to bring these projects to you all in a meeting set aside for this, so that we can have time to think through these and talk about them in more detail than we would in a normal meeting. And we also have a vacancy on our board. So to time this with our board being fully staffed, our staff is now fully staffed, and we would like to propose a date of October the 4th. That is a Friday. And maybe meet that morning. But if that date does not work for you all, we'll definitely work around that and find a suitable date. But that is what we are proposing to, staff's proposing to the board.
I'm running away on that day.
Well, you already have
Yes.
plans.
No, well, I'm running away because I'm 50 years old that day.
Oh.
So.
Oh, we can have a birthday cake.
I don't want to have, well, not that, it's just I don't want to have a golden goose egg right there, sitting right there in front of the meeting.
Does that day really not work for you, or?
No, I'll be out of town. I'll be with
Okay,
my son
okay.
over in Louisiana celebrating my 50th birthday.
Okay. What day might work for you around that time frame?
Well, early, I'll be on the road on the 3rd, so, the first week or first few days or the week after when I get back.
And Jay, do you, Fridays still work better for you,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, especially if it's in the morning.
So the 11th is the next weekend, the next Friday?
That's Texas EDC, so I think
Okay.
there'll be a conflict with staff on that one. We do shoot for the 27th of September, or there's the 18th work of October.
I'm open.
18th works better for me. Does that work for you?
Right, we'll pencil that in.
And maybe 9 o'clock in the morning?
Okay.
Does 9 o'clock in the morning work? Okay. Does that work for you?
Yes.
So tentatively, Friday, October 18th at 9 a.m. Okay. And you'll be a wise man by that time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nice. Jokes.
Yes, ma'am.
Got jokes.
Are y'all finished with that item? Okay, because I would like to have Velia come back up, and we've got something about H2, if she could just address that quickly, and then she can go back to her office. The
Okay.
question about the rent, Velia?
So, thank you. So I went back in Encode and checked. The 19,200 of the budget is for the monthly fee of $1,600 times 12. So the operating budget goes from October 1st, 2018 to September 30,
Okay.
2019.
So we're almost- okay.
So we are there, what we have, the difference between the 19,200 and the 14,400 is exactly $4,800, which will cover July, August, and September.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you for the update.
Is that all fiscal year that got me? So would you, have your staff send that email invite?
Of course.
All right, you have everything you need on that one?
Yep.
All right. Item H8, discussion and direction on modifying the Coppers Cove EDC bylaws.
This is another one that we've talked about, and now that we've had some time under our belts on staff, we've identified a couple of things that could create more efficiencies in the office. One of the things discussed is the check signing procedure. We've also talked in separate discussions about requirements of professional development on board members and whether or not these are appropriate, or especially as we're looking to solicit applications for vacant board positions. And so rather than go through this in a piecemeal process, thought it would be easier if we form either a designee or a small committee where we can open up the bylaws this month, make some proposed changes, and bring those back to you all next month and approve them all in one motion or at once, rather than keep going back and forth. So we're asking you all to either designate an individual or form a small committee, and we can work through the language of a couple of the items we've discussed to bring those back to you next month.
So we can have 2 board members without causing a quorum?
Yes, sir.
We can. We only have 4.
So we're still okay with 2,
Yes.
as long as it doesn't
Yeah.
go over, okay. What do y'all think?
Well,
I think-
sometime this month, September?
We think it would take maybe an hour for us to sit down and go through the language and meet one time. I think we're not asking for an open-ended commitment. I think just sit down and make sure everybody's on the same page.
Would we be nice to go ahead and just keep this committee, so in case future changes throughout our term?
Sure.
I like Jeremy and Joey, because y'all probably have the best availability as far as coming in, your meeting with the staff during the day.
That's, I'm okay. Check Jeremy's schedule
Mm-hmm.
again, so. Yeah, if there's no others besides questions here, I'll just go ahead and make that motion to approve 8 as read. And we'll just determine a date for next month.
Okay, as read, it just says direction.
Do we
so-
need to take action?
No, I don't think we necessarily need it. We can form the committee without.
Are you okay with that, Jay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're not talking about changing anything substantial. We're just clarifying some language and tying some things up.
Okay. Reports from staff outside entities, advisory committees, and boards, nothing today.
Well, I'll give a brief update. We did have, I think, a very, very successful mission to Houston. Coppers Cove EDC led the Grand Central Texas Economic Development Group. That included Temple, Belton, Killeen, Waco. Cameron was also a part of that meeting. To that delegation, we went to Houston for a day. We set up meetings with vice president or higher in national real estate and site selection firms. We really were able to tell the story of our Central Texas region. I think individually, we don't pop up on their radar, but collectively, I think they were pretty, I don't think they had put a lot of the pieces together when they realized that we represent an MSA of 500,000 people. Our Grand Central Texas region is 750,000, and if you include the commuting population, it's 1 million people. They were unaware of the development of the I-14 corridor and the designation as an interstate highway. They hadn't learned about the multimodal project. So we shared our story. We got some interest from them. We also talked through a couple of the services that they can provide that would benefit our region, be master planning of large industrial parks. Talked about a couple of the larger companies that they have contacts with and how to get on their radar. And I had a really, really positive positive set of meetings. And these are relationships that I've brought with me to this region and that we're going to develop. And I think that it was a good day for our region, and a good day for our EDC to lead that group and get such a positive response. And we also talked in depth about what it would take to have an anchor tenant or a trailblazer consider the Narrows or future industrial space that we may acquire and develop, and how to get there. And I think that there was really good energy around the table, and we feel that there is a path forward to get these things done. So.
Excellent. Any other reports? Thank you. Items for future agendas.
None additional for me.
Hearing none, no executive session today. The time is 1:06, and we are adjourned.